Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I am your host, Matt Belair, and today's guest has been immersed in the study of frequency for decades. While researching dolphins for his best-selling novel, The Aquarians, he was introduced to the power of vibration, especially as it pertains to revealing form to the mind of a dolphin. Currently conducting frequency experiments at the world-famous Integratron in California's Mojave Desert, he has published many of his findings in the sonic geometry video series. Now working alongside some of the world's premier physicists, mathematicians, and audio engineers, he has been led to a unique geometric pattern he calls the Genesis structure, which he believes could reveal the very matrix of reality and which is described in detail in Sonic Geometry 2, Communicating with the Universe. As the host of the international radio show Awakening Code Radio, he has interviewed such luminaries as Dr. Masaru Emoto, physicist Nassim Harramein, ancient civilizations researcher Michael Tellinger, and frequency pioneer Jonathan Goldman. Welcome to the show, Eric Rankin. What's up,
Hey,
brother?
thanks. Thank you, Matt. It's great to see you. I thought you were somewhere local, but you're up in Canada.
I'm up in Canada. I was in your neighborhood for a while. I was close by in Sedona, in Arizona, pretty much all winter. But yeah, I came back to the homeland.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for having me on your show. I've heard actually a lot of great things, and our mutual friend Michelle Anderson hooked us up, and I'm always grateful for all of her involvement.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, shout out Michelle. She's amazing, and it's great. I love how it's kind of come full circle for me because I remember watching Sonic Geometry maybe. I think it was like after Burning Man 2 years ago, and I had just started the podcast, and someone's like, "You should check out this documentary and check out this guy Eric Rankin." And I looked at it, and I didn't reach out then, but I remember watching it, and it's put in such a simple way, but it's still very deep concepts. Do you know what I mean? And I like how you tie it into frequency and vibration. You have the quote in there that Tesla said, if you want to understand the universe, it's all about frequency and vibration. And so maybe you just want to begin by giving me a little background on yourself and how you got to where you are today, because you're working with some of the leaders. Nassim Harramein is a massive deal. So you're in a very elite group of physicists and mathematicians working on some pretty incredible stuff.
It's crazy how it has all worked out. It really is. Nassim is one. I'm broadcasting from my apartment here. We just had Manas Kafatos, who co-wrote You Are the Universe with Deepak Chopra. He was here just about 4 weeks ago and looking at some of the models that I'll show you later on in our conversation. But my story really started, I guess, being interested in frequency was with dolphins. I had to learn a lot. I wrote a novel that had how they have this bioacoustic sense of using ultrasound and translating that into visual images, and that really that intrigued me, that we could use sound, and that's how we have our idea of ultrasound, using ultrasound on a woman and seeing a fetus in the womb. That technology came from dolphins. That's how we even came up with the idea of doing that. And then I wrote this book, and it was a novel, but it had a lot of science in it about dolphins and their acoustic abilities. And then just kind of fast forwarding forward, Michelle, our friend, had told me about this place called the Integratron out in Joshua Tree. And I didn't go out with one of her outings, but eventually I was guided there to do an overnight gong concert. So it was like big planetary gongs playing for 8 hours all night long. And I definitely had an opening experience there to both the building, its purpose, frequency in a new way. And then I don't know if I'd call it a download, but I was guided to research frequency in a different way and the numerics of frequency. And it was kind of like just a rabbit hole hunt. There was nothing specific. Some people may be familiar with the Solfeggio scale and maybe have heard of 528 hertz and things like that. So of course, I ended up finding that as well. And I'd heard of Pythagorean tuning. So I'm a musician. I know that we tune our instruments to 440 hertz. Any tuner you buy in any music store somewhere will say 440 hertz on there as the keystone for tuning all the other notes around. Um, and then literally it was just one day. So I've already been going out to the Integratron for a while, and I was sitting in my office and I heard a voice in my head. And I've had this happen a few times. and it just instructed me to go to my conference room. I had a whiteboard there and to draw a triangle. And I did that. I followed this voice's instructions. And then to write the sum total of the three angles. So a triangle, I am no expert in geometry. People think I am. They email me all the time. I am connected with all these physicists that know that. I failed geometry, hated math, never took a physics class in my life. So it's quite funny when I'm sitting in these groups. But what I'm bringing to it is something that had not been noticed yet. And I'm about to tell you that I drew a triangle and I wrote down the sum total of its angles. And that's about the end of my remembrance of geometry. I knew a circle was 360, and I remembered that a triangle is 180. So the three angles of a triangle will always be 180. Doesn't matter if it's a right angle or an equilateral triangle, any combination, it will always total 180. So I drew it, I wrote 180 on my dry erase board, and then this voice said, no, you play that as a tone. And I'm like, well, how would I play that as a tone? And I got to thinking that you could probably do that on your smartphone, that there's probably apps that are tone generating apps that would not have existed maybe certainly not 10 years ago. And so I punched in 180 cycles per second and played that and heard a tone. Like, okay, I drew it, I wrote the number, and I played the tone. And it's like, well, no, don't stop there. Now do the other geometric shapes. So from there, to learn what a sum total of a square was, I could figure that out. It's 4 90-degree angles. So that's 4 times 90 is 360. That's pretty easy. I knew a circle was 360. And all of a sudden, I made a connection there. 360 is double 180. So if in musical terms, that would be an octave above. If a tone is vibrating at 180, you would just double it and have the same tone twice as high in pitch. And then the next one, a pentagon, I had to look up what a pentagon totals. I had no idea what the sum total of a pentagon was. It's 540. So I played that, and then I heard what in musical terms we just call a fifth. I heard this la, 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 and I'm like, wow, that's interesting. And I kept going. A hexagon is 720. 720 is another octave of the first 180. So it's that. And then a septagon, 7 sides, is 900. And that provided the third to build this la, la, la. And I'm like, wow, geometry. And then an octagon was 1080. And that's pretty much, until you start getting crazy, that's all the geometric shapes that we use 99% of the time, from triangle to octagon. And if you play the numbers of those, you get a major chord. And I'm like, wow, geometry is playing a major chord, this la, la, la. That's the thing that our ears hear and tell us everything's going well. If you hear major chord music in a movie, everything's going correct. People are falling in love. It's what we announce kings and queens with the trumpet fanfares. That's always major chord music. So it's telling us that thing is good. It's like the most beautiful music there is a major chord. Here's geometry revealing that major chord. So I'm like, wow, that's exciting. I'm going to go learn about that. So I just dropped everything I was doing, went to my computer, Google searched, YouTube searched, in blogs, web pages, anything I could find. And I'd already been following people that had mentioned, like Greg Braden, mentioning like frequency and geometry in the same sentence, but never play geometry as frequency. There was not one thing on the internet that I could find playing geometry would reveal major chord harmonics. So that's kind of my thing, that primarily that people say, hey, is it possible? I mean, did you discover this? And I'm like, I don't know if discovering it is the right word, but it does seem like somebody hadn't noticed that. And it seems like a very primary thing that we should have probably noticed. And it might be very important in the long run, that now we're talking about, if the universe is geometric, which our friend Nassim Harramein would say, and physicists like Manos would say, it's a symphony of harmony. If our universe is geometric, then it's harmonious in the most literal way possible, that our entire existence is sort of like a harmonic symphony. So that's what launched the information in sonic geometry, the first video. And as I started writing information down, you can jump in and ask a question anytime you want. I don't need to keep rattling on.
Yeah, no, this is a good place? Yeah, this is perfect.
Okay, so what really got crazy was there was 3 number sequences that were revealed to me in that first day. So I could write a 90-degree angle, and then 180 is the triangle, 360 is the circle and square, 720 is a hexagon. So those are just doublings of each other. So that would all be the same note, just all the way across the board. And then the 900 of the septagon, I could go half or I could go double and find all of those numbers straight line across the same tone, just different pitches. And then I could take the 540, 1080, and octave above 2160 and get the same note at the end. So it's almost like it became a Sudoku puzzle where I had 3 of the number sequences. And I just thought, could these reveal a scale? Is there a tonal scale in here? So the first thing I noticed, and maybe you caught this, is that all of these numbers, the 180s and the 360s and the 540s, they reveal 720s, they add up to 9. And I'm like, well, that's interesting as well. So I used 9 as this factor to jump around and build a scale. And sure enough, I was able to build a scale in a way that is not usually used. Like Pythagorean tuning or Pythagoras, he would have done it by fifths. So he would have gone la, 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 la. He would have done it that way to find the next note. This was just using an algorithm, a mathematical algorithm. Add multiple of 9, next tone, multiple of 9, next tone. And it took me there. All of a sudden, it didn't take very long. All of the numbers filled themselves out because it moved. When I started at the 180, it moved me down to that 900 and moved me down to the 1080, all locked into the same grid. And all of a sudden, I was seeing other number sequences that jumped out at me. And the first one was 2160. There's 540, 1080, and double that is 2160. And I'm like, I've seen that number before. And we're doing research for my book. It was called The Aquarians. And I had to learn a little bit more about astrology than I really ever knew. And I don't follow astrology that much. But an astrological age is 2,160 years long. So I'm like, well, that's a coincidence that the sum total of a cube and a harmonic of the triangle is also the length of an astrological age. Highly coincidental and cross-referencing a bunch of different disciplines. And then like Slumdog Millionaire, if you saw that movie, or I probably learned it on Jeopardy. I watch Jeopardy all the time. I remember that the moon's diameter in miles is 2160. And I'm like, here's 4 things, the exact same number. How is that possible? And then other numbers jumped out at me. 432 was in this grid. And I'd heard of Pythagorean tuning, but I didn't really know much about it. And then half of 432 is 216. 216 is the same number sequence as the moon, 2160. And then half of that is 108. And I've kind of followed Eastern religions enough to know that 108 is the number of beads in a mala necklace, or the times that mantras and mudras are repeated. I'm like, there's a whole lot of coincidence. 144 was in this grid. And I'm like, 144,000 in the Bible, or 144 shows up in a lot of different ways. Egypt, the Great Pyramid of Giza, Stonehenge, Mayan temples. 144 is a number that's there. Half of 144 is 72. 72 is in the Kabbalah, and the 72 names of God. When Muslim people do something and go to heaven, and there's 72 virgins waiting for them. I'm like, how are all these significant mythological, religious, scriptural numbers contained in this grid? So I wrote all this stuff down. I sent it to my dear friend Alana Luna. She lives in Arizona, and she's a video producer. She can create videos and audio. And I just sent it to her on a big sheet of paper, and she got it in the mail and just looked at it, and she goes, holy crap, we have to do something with this. She goes, I feel like I'm staring into the universe. And I'm like, I know, I felt like that too. And it took her a year, but she made that video, Sonic Geometry. I wrote it, narrated it, but she took all the information and single-handedly, with zero budget, made that video that's gotten over 1 million views and seriously has attracted top level physicists, mathematicians. It has got me invited to sit on think tank roundtable discussions with seriously the top level people in physics and mathematics in the world. So I sit there thinking I'm just the stooge, but they're interested in what this information. Just take me out of the loop. The information is compelling.
Mm-hmm. So. Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. And I definitely recommend everybody listening have a look at them. You post them for free on YouTube. They're very well done. They're beautifully done. And I don't know when you released the first one, but it's
First one would have been, we did both of them on the autumnal equinox. So the first one was 2013, and then the last one was 2016. No,
yeah. I thought
yeah, 13.
Yeah, I thought the first one was a few years back. So, even now it was a pleasure to watch. So I rewatched it today just to kind of get up to speed to figure out what I was going to ask you, because I remember watching it and being like, okay, I get it. It makes sense, but holy smokes. So there's a lot in those. It's very powerful information. It talks about, ancient civilizations, Sumeria, the Sumerians, Mesopotamia. Do you want to give like a brief overview of what that, because I think that culture is super important, because basically in there you say it's the basics of math, and
It's
it is
critical.
everywhere. Yeah.
It's critical. So that's where the story went from an intriguing bunch of coincidences to a true story. And I wasn't looking. I'm a fan. I've watched Ancient Aliens since it probably came on. I saw Chariots of the Gods when it came out in the movies in the 70s, Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods. But I wasn't looking at all for any kind of extraterrestrial aspect to this information. I was just intrigued the way it coincidentally fit within itself. But there became a story. So we all know how many degrees are in a circle. I hate to put you on a spot, but hopefully, how many degrees are in a circle?
360. Lucky I did my
Yes.
homework.
Most people know that there are 360 degrees in a circle. But if I asked you why, and if you've never seen my video, why are there 360 degrees in a circle? Because that circle is what guides us to all geometry. We put all geometry over that circle, or the circle over all geometry, to get to those angles that geometry is. So a circle is hugely important, but the question is, why is a circle 360 degrees? Most people, even engineers, mathematicians, they have no clue why a circle is 360 degrees. And that's what puts us over the cliff into this incredible story that you have to introduce the the extraterrestrial visitation aspect to it. So you have to go back in time. Where where did 360 become how we measure a circle? We have to go back. We know the exact place and the exact moment. It was 6,000 years ago in Sumeria, the region of Mesopotamia, Sumeria. And this is more or less like a city state at the time. So it's big, but not like a country big. And so in this one fairly small area, 6,000 years ago, where most of mankind is existing as a hunter-gatherer, the first of many technologies was invented. So the first written language, the math system that we'll talk about that reveals 360 in a circle, the first loom to weave fabric, the first wheeled and axled vehicle, the first sailboat, the first beer, the first pyramid, the first multi-story building, all these technologies, first pottery wheel, all these technologies, they weren't tweaked at that time, they were created. All of these technologies in one place at one time. And we can read their language, cuneiform. And so they created lots of murals, and they say we can read. We didn't invent this technology. It was gifted to us by these sky visitors that they called the Anunnaki, or the Anakim, or the Anak. And it's in their murals, it's in their stories. It wasn't a myth, it wasn't a fairy tale, it wasn't an allegory. This was presented as fact, that these sky beings came and gifted us this information, this technology, to more or less jumpstart. I mean, I don't think they said jumpstart, but to that's how we created all this information. And the last thing was this math system. So if we think of math, most of the world today is on the metric system, and metrics works by functions of 10. Because we have 10, fingers, we would think 10 would be the most logical way we would multiply: 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. But in Sumeria at this time, that's not how they were taught to do math. They were taught to arrive at 12. So you use your thumb on one hand and count the either knuckles or pads: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you hold that 12 on one hand, and then on your other, you hold a 12, then get to a 12 again, 24, add that 24 again is 36, add that 24 again is 48, And then that 24 again is 60. So any 12 that we have in our current life, 12 months in a year, 12 dozen donuts, 12 gods in mythology, all those 12s come from this counting system. And all the 60s that we have, 60 seconds to a minute and 60 degrees of geometry that works in the world, is measuring the world in nautical miles. 60 degrees is what introduced us to a circle being 360 degrees. 60 times 6. A circle was always divided into 6 pi shapes, and each one of those pi shapes is 60 degrees. That's why a circle's 360. 360 is based on this 1260 math system that came from Sumeria, and they said it was Sky Visitor that gifted us to this. So it's an incredible story that just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper as you go, because the first problem we had, and it wasn't really a problem, we had so many really smart people watch the first sonic geometry video. And if there was not a complaint, but a critique, it was, don't get too hung up on these counting systems, pounds or ounces or kilos or anything like that, because they're all man-made systems. So you're talking about inches and feet and miles and what is 60? What is a second? That's just we decided to measure a rotation of the earth and break it down into all these units. So that's that's the best argument there is all this stuff is man-made, and we're just trying to shoehorn it into itself to make it fit and make some crazy fact-based bunch of information. So I had to really think about that and go, well, that's a logical comment and critique. And that's where the second sonic geometry video more or less came from, is it's all arbitrary unless it isn't. And if it isn't, is there something to clock all of this 1260 math, all the numbers of geometry, all the 432s and its octaves of 216s and 864s and seconds in a day, miles, inches? Is there something that holds all that stuff together? And miraculously, there is. There is a mechanical function of Earth that Earth rotates. One full rotation we call a day. It orbits our star, our sun. That takes 365 days. And then what most people don't know is that it wobbles. So like a top slowing down, our Earth wobbles. And it's very slow. Takes 25,920 years to complete one full cycle. That's the big number. The Mayans recognized this number 1,000 years ago, and they called it one great year. So now we have this mechanical movement of what the Earth does. And crazy enough, if you implement that Sumerian counting system into it, all of it fits. If you factor seconds into it, all of it fits. If you factor miles, and you're right. Now we're talking about a matrix of information that is not just higgledy-piggledy and a bunch of arbitrary systems arguing with each other like royal and metric systems. It's one system that just goes boom and stays locked. There is no kind of and sort of off. And then the crazy thing is, so in this system, we have a number like 432. We talked about 432 doubled is the number sequence is 864. 864 with a bunch of zeros behind it is the diameter of our sun. 2 halved, the number sequence is 216. 216 with zeros behind it is the diameter of our moon. And it's like, wow, how is all this? And number of seconds in a day. We were guided to count 24 hours times 60 minutes times 60 seconds. That's 864, same diameter as the sun, 000. So we're talking about this incredible locking, synchronous, coincidental locking of information that more or less says somebody had to know all this, somebody with a greater view, with a better understanding of our planet that our ancestors 6,000 years ago could have ever had. They had to have known this. They had to seed us with this information and just wait like a time-released pill, wait for this information to serve its place then and to keep serving itself as our technology advanced and we could keep seeing, oh my gosh, look at what this is revealing up until today. It's amazing.
Yeah, wow. That would be such a beautiful process to go through. It was amazing to watch the documentary, but as you're like kind of, doing your detective work and just one thing after another, be like, oh my
Felt
God,
like I was in
oh
a
my God.
movie.
Yeah.
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 It truly felt like I was in a movie, like Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters.
Right.
It was just too much. So a new piece of information, and I'm like, oh, that can't fit. Boom. That can't possibly fit into this. Fits, and it keeps happening. In the second sonic geometry video, I thought I was done with the first sonic geometry video. I mean, because I don't have any background in math or physics, I'm just like, that's all I'll ever know. And then our friend Michelle Anderson, who I co-host Awakening Code Radio with, she came back from Contact in the Desert that I think were you just at this year or last year?
This year is my first one.
Okay, so this year, so she came back with a video lecture by Michael Tellinger. It had been recorded there. She bought the DVD and brought it. She goes, I don't know why I didn't buy anything else there, and I'm not into numbers and stuff. But he was started talking about all these numbers, and it reminded me of your video. I put this video in, and sure enough, now here's a document, a 6,000-year-old document coming from Sumeria, the same place that I had talked about, but did not know this document existed. It's called the Sumerian Kings List, and so many of these numbers in sequence. There was 288, 360, 432. And I'm like, why are they writing these numbers in sequence, revealing that same chord? La, la, la. If you play those numbers, that's all you got to do. You get the same chord, triad, major chord triad that geometry reveals, just a different chord. It's a D chord instead of an F sharp chord, but the same perfect harmonics. And I go, all right, I guess I'm on the quest now. Can we build another video? Is there that much more information? And it ended up there was. And if Tesla was right, that frequency and vibration and energy are the cornerstones, and that's what every physicist says now, is that vibration and frequency is more or less the glue that holds energy together to become matter, what we call matter. A real physicist would say, let's let go of the word matter, because if you keep going small enough, you will not see matter anymore. I kept zooming in on you. I would start, get to the molecular level, and then submolecules. I would see atoms, and some atoms, it's just energy. So you would dissipate, and I don't know how you did or what is keeping it combined. It's frequency. So frequency looks like this, instead of straight lines. A frequency band has the sine wave like this and the cosine wave underneath it. So when a guitar vibrates, a guitar string vibrates, it doesn't just go straight and then curved at the top. It has this curve at the bottom as well. So a pulse of frequency really looks like this. And I became aware of that. And I was a fan of the spirit science videos from Canada. I don't know if you're familiar with those, the animated.
Yeah, and just for the listeners too, I'd say, what would you say that is, an eye shape? Like the people that are getting the podcast, I can't see it.
Oddly enough, it is an eye shape. Just like we see, if you turn over an American dollar bill, you see the eye in a pyramid, the eye of Horus in Egypt, we see that eye shape. The ichthus fish in Christianity, we see almost the same eye shape. 60 degrees of arc. This happens to be 60 degrees of arc. That's what sacred geometry is 60 degrees of arc right here. So this all of a sudden becomes another thing that has been communicated to us over and over and over again. And I watched one of these spirit science videos. It was called The God Particle. And it introduced me to work by an artist named Michael Evans. And I'm like, wow, this is big stuff, because what Michael Evans saw in his mind is, instead of a flat shape like this, he saw it as a dimensional shape like this. And this ends up becoming really, really important, because the Holy Grail in geometry, in spatial geometry, the smallest straight line geometric form is a triangle, and the smallest multidimensional geometric shape is a tetrahedron. So here's a tetrahedron. This is what most people that are involved in geometry and physics, they really focus on this, because it doesn't get any smaller than this. to be a geometric solid, it has to have points, and it has to have edges, and it has to have faces. So in most geometry, this is the holy grail. This is as small as it gets, so it must really be important. But even Leonardo da Vinci saw this 500 years ago. If you curve the straight line, that's all you did is curved it. Now you're talking about the true smallest geometric solid. It still has an edge, it has three faces, and it has points. So this is the true smallest geometric containment vessel there could possibly be. And Michael Evans called this the Trion Ray. And so I became aware of this form. I visited him. He happened to live, I didn't know where he lived. The video came from Canada, but he only lives an hour away from me. And actually, 6 months ago, he lived about a block away from me at an address 432 Ocean Avenue. And he, after him seeing this shape maybe 25 years ago, he kind of became obsessed and started doing geometric forms that were all beautiful and curved instead of straight like this. He saw these breathing models of geometric forms. So here's like one side. He started thinking of the space between spaces and the true beauty of the smallest geometric form. How could it still fit in the geometry that we know and recognize, all the Platonic solids? And so I came down to his house. I saw these, he's got gobs of artwork, the chairs, all this. And I went home and said, I got to see more of what this does. And I took this shape more or less and just started a building project with pipe cleaners and styrofoam balls is what I did. And I just took, this is a more or less a tetrahedron with curved shapes, but I just followed tetrahedrons. And once I did, I don't think I can show it to you. It's too big, but I ended up creating a model that I didn't know what it was. But
well, that's serious. That's amazing.
It's
We're
pretty
gonna have
crazy.
to get a we're gonna have to get a full shot of that. That thing looks intense.
I don't know that we can, but the crazy thing, after I started with the tetrahedron at the top, I just kept following its own lines and building it. And at the bottom, it built sacred geometry that's behind your head. You just happen to move away, and that 3D shape revealed the flat 2D. Move your head a little bit so people can see that sacred geometry.
Oh, yeah.
It reveals the exact same pattern. Yes. So here, humanity has been seeing and gifted with this 2D flat page version, which I would call just the primer, like in the movie Contact. It's the most elemental form, but it has always been inviting what I just showed you, that yes, sacred geometry is in there, but it is a curved space. So let me know if you have a question, or I'll just keep going.
Yeah, keep going. I have lots, but you're dishing out so much great information, so keep it going.
All right. So Buckminster Fuller, if you've heard of him, was called one of the greatest minds of the 20th century. And his mind was all about curve. He was factoring in spin, just like Nassim Harramein is talking about vortex and spin and arc and toroidal fields, and all this stuff related to curve is supremely important. Well, what Buckminster Fuller became famous for was, he called it the closest compaction of spheres. And he realized that if you took one ball, you could put 12 around it and they would all touch each other and all touch the center ball. And he said that means something, because spheres are nature. You know, we see spheres in nature, bubbles and things, planets and stars all go spheroidal. So he became obsessed with this closest compaction of spheres. He wrote an entire book that's about as thicker than the Bible about just this. And what he realized is that there was a new to him geometric form inside of it. So I'm going to show you another version. So here's those same 12 balls and styrofoam balls, 12 around one. Yep. But what he realized it was this geometric form called the vector equilibrium. Whoa. So 12 balls around one, all touching each other and all looking like cells and touching the center, reveals this shape called the vector equilibrium. This is in the movie Thrive. Nassim Harramein's work really is more or less all about this. The thing about the vector equilibrium that Nassim's work, and I just accidentally stumbled on it, was inside that first crazy pipe cleaner styrofoam thing I showed you, I realized there was a structure inside of it, and that structure looks like this. And this structure is what launches sacred geometry in 4 dimensions, taking Michael Evans' Trion Ray, using 60 degrees, building nothing but 60-degree triangles. Here's the triangle right here. And what you get is like this. It's that same core flower in the middle, but you end up getting Buckminster Fuller's vector equilibrium, the same triangles and squares. This is the same vector equilibrium, it's just with curved space. So all of this information that dovetails into the sonic geometry matrix fits this as well. It's same thing with the Sumerian counting system, the 1260 counting system. It all fits. So we have to look at this bed of information that we're looking at ancient texts and ancient symbols, and a bit of our programming that we recognize a major chord as something that sounds right to our ears, and even then take something like a growth sequence, like the Fibonacci growth sequence, the Fibonacci algorithm. If you take the first 6 steps of the Fibonacci spiral, whether it's a snail or an entire galaxy, the first 6 steps from birth to getting it looking like a spiral reveals the same numerics of a major chord. It's la, la, la. So if we were to send a signal out or receive a signal back to the universe, just like in Close Encounters, instead of dot, 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 it would really be just the harmonics of the Fibonacci sequence. It's an unbelievable that the Fibonacci growth sequence is numerically perfect major chord harmonics, that geometry reveals numerically perfect major chord harmonics, and that Sumerian murals and texts revealed in order perfectly numerically perfect major chord harmonics. Every one of them implying our universe is a symphonic harmonic matrix and geometric. And it all talks to itself, and it all makes sense to itself. And to this day, I'm 4 years later on this thing, new stuff keeps coming all the time that fits into it. So there was a time when it was just overwhelming, and I was like, each one little thing was crazy and exciting, but now it's all of these things. It's 100 different things or more that all fit. And that's what keeps me just lit up and on fire. And this is, my purpose. I believe I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing here. I had a good friend, a cinematographer, Michael Boydie. He's making a movie called Heartbeat. And he had a beautiful quote. He says, "We exist so that consciousness can experience itself and recognize." And the way that happens is this coincidental synchronistic essence. And that's what all this information is. It's almost like we're catching up to this consciousness that left this information for us 6,000 years ago. And now we're catching up to it and seeing what it reveals. And it's all frequency. We didn't know it was frequency. We didn't know that 288, 360, 432 would reveal a major chord triad, but it does. We didn't know that it would reveal a major chord triad would reveal the Fibonacci spiral. Your hand is a Fibonacci spiral. Your ear is a Fibonacci spiral. Your pineal gland is a Fibonacci sequence. All these things in our biology are Fibonacci spirals, all the way out to galaxies, and they all fit this numerical matrix. There you go.
Amazing, brother. Amazing. I was gonna give you the mic drop. Okay? Holy crap! There was sections, and I was like, okay, maybe a few minutes in, I'm like, oh, I have like 4 thoughts and questions, and then you go, and then I'd have another 4 questions.
Stop me.
No, it's good. Okay. So holy smokes! All right, let me just say some things. Okay,
All
holy. All right. So what I found interesting, I don't know if it was Tellinger or who it was, but even just the what's the Sumerian writing? What's that called again?
Cuneiform.
Yeah, cuneiform. The way they write it, apparently, because it's in stone, and even that alone is very, very curious the way that they decipher it, because how deep it goes into the stone, the curvature of it. I don't know if you've looked at that a lot, but it was either Tellinger.
I'll stop you because Michael Tellinger was just in my apartment about 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, and he said he got that idea of cuneiform looking like arc because it's from watching my video. from
Amazing.
watching the sonic geometry video.
Yeah,
I
so
went to his lecture. I went to his lecture. He had no idea who I was, and part of the sonic geometry video is in his lecture now these days. So it's pretty funny. But keep going. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. That's amazing. I got to see him speak in Sedona, and I might be seeing him in South Africa. I think he's doing an event next year. But it was
Yeah.
either him, Dan Winter, but just talking about how even the way that they have been coding cuneiform and how they deciphered it is so interesting in itself, and it's ancient. And so, so we have that. They're giving us math and geometry and the building blocks of life and all nature and even things that we couldn't even comprehend. There's no way they could. They're building a wheel.
Yeah.
That's they're building a wheel. They wouldn't know everything in the universe, right? So,
No.
so that I find very interesting. How it all links up to the Mayan calendar. The one great year. Question what. Well, the King's List is also very interesting. So there's kind of like, I'll leave it up to you which way you kind of want to swing with it. But what my thoughts are is, where is this information taking us? How can we apply it how can we apply it? What are you working on or excited about in bringing this forward? And if we start to understand, because it's interesting how this is working, the last 5-6 podcasts I'd say is a lot around, just people who have had experience with extraterrestrials or aliens or higher life forms. Some people call them multidimensionals. It's just all of a sudden and I've been fine with it for a long time. But that's like a break in consciousness for some people, like, whoa, that's too much. But what I've been noticing is even in the community when I'm coming home and visiting, a lot more people are opening up. Once you give them the space to kind of open up, they have an experience that they can't explain. So if we're going to talk on the highest level of what's going on the planet with geometry and like if these beings exist, what does that mean for us? What do they want? What are we in now? In the end of the first sonic geometry, I wrote something down where it said it signified an age of new consciousness, or possibly, and is that where you think we're going? And or do you want to talk about what you're excited about working on? So that's about a rant of how my mind is processing all that, because it's a lot, and especially when you get into watching sonic geometry, to just visually see the geometry, you see it linked up to nature. And it's kind of like, for me, when I was younger, reading books on Zen and enlightenment when I'm like 15, it was like one of those pictures that you cross your eyes and then the picture pops out. Like,
Yes.
I know that it's beyond me and it makes sense in my, because I'm not strong in math. I'm not strong in physics at all. But I know I'm getting information that's expanding my consciousness, and it's something's going in there. It's like it's information. So with that huge rant, where would you want to go with that? Or you could even talk about the Genesis structure and what your theory is with that.
So I'll just ask you, what's the biggest question? What is the biggest question?
The biggest
ever
question
for
ever?
you?
What is the biggest question ever for me? Shit, I don't know.
regarding us. I mean, what would it be?
Like humans?
Mm-hmm.
Humans. So for me, the question is always, if I'm going to go how do I expand my own consciousness to break the limits of this reality and experience total freedom, so I've experienced multidimensional states as you, I'm sure, have. It's staying that and really just allowing that energy or that awareness to, break through full time. And then how do I bring all of the people on the planet with me? Everybody.
Right.
We live in this new earth. Everybody's got food, water, clothing, shelter. We're all lit up. We're all doing our part. We're growing in the way that we want. And I think that that's growing. If you're a rose in a garden, just let it grow. It just needs sunlight and water, and it becomes this beautiful thing. And we all are just such unique signatures. And we just don't live in a world where I see that it's very easy to do that, because, we're under this, slave money system essentially, and all the other, unlimited podcasts on the baloney. So, for me, the ultimate question is developing myself into, into a higher energy state or awareness, or that, I don't know.
The greater knowingness. Yeah. It's like we feel called, people, whether they're on a spirit quest or even a physics quest, there's like a desire for a greater knowingness. And people that take plant medicine journeys, in a sacred way are doing the same thing, whether it's ayahuasca or mushrooms or whatever. They're doing it and coming back from their experiences with a very similar vision, like I saw the grid or I saw the energy, things like that. So now let's just talk about all this information that is coming through to us through mathematics and through geometry, through curved wave pattern and harmonics. To me, the harmonic signature of a major chord triad must mean something if it's revealed everywhere. If it's revealed in the growth cycle of the Fibonacci series, it must mean something. If perfect harmonics, major chord harmonics, are revealed in geometry, it must mean something. If the Sumerians were gifted this numerically perfect information from their sky god visitors, it probably means something. So how much logic does it make sense that numerically perfect frequencies would travel, like Fibonacci frequencies, the first 6 steps of the Fibonacci cycle, would travel through our Fibonacci ear canal and activate our Fibonacci pineal gland, which is the gland that is the one that opens up and sees this greater dimension of what reality really is. So now we're talking about, without the plant medicines and any kind of external use, we're talking about nothing but frequency. The same thing that Tesla and Einstein, everybody said, is the glue and the background noise of all things in all dimensions. Now we're tapping into it, but we're being specific. It's not just any frequencies. We're being specific because we've been guided to the specific sets of frequencies. So I think we have been here's my conjecture. I think we have been guided to these specific set of frequencies, and they have to be numerically perfect. And I can't stress that enough. A tetrahedron is only a tetrahedron like this if it's numerically perfect in all of its angles, okay? So perfection matters in geometry and growth patterns. So when we talk about a major chord triad, you can go sit down at any piano today and play a major chord, a C major, la, 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 a D, la, la, la. Doesn't matter. You can play those major chords. They're not numerically perfect major chords anymore. We have fudged our tuning systems. Us, humanity, in our infinite wisdom, we started making ever more complicated musical instruments, and we fudged our way out of perfect harmonics as Pythagoras would have known them, strictly by ratio or mathematics. So math is no longer music, and music is no longer math perfectly. So if you take a frequency set, let's say you start wrong in the audio range, a few hundred hertz cycles, few hundred cycles per second, layer it, sounds okay to our ears, but now let's octave it up, let's double it, and double it again, and double it again. We only have to double it 4 or 5 times, and if it starts wrong a little bit, by the time you double it 4, 5, 6 times, it's way wrong. It's nowhere even close in the realm of what we would call numerically perfect harmonics. So if it matters in the subsonic level and it matters in the ultrasonic level, the signpost, our ears are the technology to recognize what numerically or perfect harmonics are supposed to be, lock into the math of that, and then take that math into ultrasound, take that math into subsound. That's where I'm guessing, whether it's healing or activation or vision quest, just knowing, just a knowingness without somebody even being taught a single thing that we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes. We play these frequency sets or we expose people to it and they just go, holy crap, I just saw it. I saw the creation process of the universe. I saw the grid. I saw the waves. I saw the energy. Isn't that what we would like to think we could do? I mean, eventually, is like Lucy in that movie. I love that movie, Lucy, with Scarlett Johansson. She started just seeing all of it in all of its energetic signatures. What happens when we can see like that or exist like that? And then you're just talking about moving things telepathically, communicating without speaking, transporting ourselves without needing to move the physical body. The consciousness just goes. I mean, we're talking about going out of the 10% of our brain, function, and really probably starting to experience what we were meant to experience, asking that big question, who are we and why are we here and what are we doing? For what purpose? We don't know yet. It wasn't to be better consumers and employees and taxpayers, materialists, for sure. And if not that, then what is it? It is what we're talking about today, expanding and growing into the essence of creation, the mathematics, the harmonics of creation. And I can't tell you how it's going to play out. We're just kind of starting, sort of.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. So would you think that okay, so we possibly are able to find these certain frequencies, we can use a tool, maybe sound vibration, because there's lots of sound healing out there. You were at the Integratron. That's a very interesting, maybe we can talk about that really briefly. Who was the guy? He basically got a download from, he said he got
George Van
download from,
Tassel.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I wanted to go, but it's always booked up. I was right there after Contact in the Desert, and I was like, I have to see this thing. And
Yeah.
essentially, he gets a download or communication from extraterrestrials. He builds this thing on sacred geometry, and it's supposed to be some epic portal, and it's in a very special place near Joshua Tree.
Yeah.
It's a really, really special place. So let's say we have and then you use the sound bowl. So that's healing too, and that's vibration. Oh, and
Yes.
where one of the earlier questions I was going to ask, and this came from, I think it was either watching Gerald Clark, who's a really interesting guy. He does a lot on Anunnaki, the Anunnaki origins. He's the author of the Seventh Planet or Sixth Planet. I don't know. I should know that. So, sorry, Gerald. The Ninth Planet, one of them. Um, and yeah, oh yeah, and
Or the 12th, or I don't really, Nibiru and all this stuff. I don't really follow a lot of that, but
yeah, so this guy in himself is really interesting. He's a former IBM engineer. Really, I had a half an hour talk with him one day, and I within the first few paragraphs of speaking, I was like, "So you're just like really, really smart, huh?" And he's just like, "Yep." I was like, "Okay, like
yeah.
right on." Like he just knows his stuff. Crap, I can't remember where that was going, but essentially, to the pineal gland in the Sumerian hieroglyphs and things like that, they're holding one. So if we could have technology and vibration that activates it, the fluoride in the water, then we're really awakening to what's possible. And it goes, I think for me, the most basic shift would be from fear-based to love-based, from
Sure.
from taking, to actually giving and serving and working as a unit. And when we can have these new technologies, these new information, this new bigger understanding, we can start to work together a lot more harmoniously, because I think that right now the only thing that prevents us from working together is the systems that we live in. It's the way that everything's set up. We're kind of in a losing game. It's like,
We're slaves to a system. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Right now, but we all have the tug in our heart that we don't want to be slaves to the system. We don't want to worry about an intangible like money. Just because you hold something in your hand and go, this has value, I can trade it for something that is truly valuable, like water or food or shelter. We will, Michael Tellinger and his Ubuntu movement is all about that. We didn't always have money. And someday we could very well move past this money system, but it is an enslavement system. It makes rich people really, really rich. They're not going to let go of any control of this anytime soon. So it becomes just our personal responsibility. Outsiders like you and me, we have technology at our hands that allows us to share things that we are learning and growing into and seeing and connecting to other people. So there is a movement afoot right now that fills me full of hope of this common vision. And even guys like Darwin, and whether you believe in evolution exactly as it is, the idea of survival of the fittest, even to Darwin, I don't think meant the survival of the most, the one who could kill the most, because eventually the fit would just kill everybody else, and then be the last two fit, and there would only be one. It's the survival of the most communal. It's the survival of the entity, the organism that works most harmoniously. There's that word harmony again. You used it without probably even thinking about it. Harmony matters, and our universe is truly a harmonic structure. It's a harmonic matrix, and we have somehow been steered out of it. We must have been able to use it at some point. Our ancestors that built the pyramids had to know something that we did not know, because we could not build the Great Pyramid of Giza today. Or if we did, it would be this gargantuan. And if you just do the math, it was Nassim Harramein who I had in my studio, and he just said, "Listen, there's 2.5 million stones in the one pyramid alone, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Just do the math, and if you do it, if you set something like 50 stones a day times 150 years, it would be every half hour, 24 hours a day, you would have to put a stone in, cut, transport, and put in place in perfect placement to where this pyramid is going to be perfect shape mathematically. The top is perfectly centered over this 13-acre, base. And he goes, every half hour, it would take 150 years. Just one building, one pyramid. So obviously they're using technology that we do not know how to use. And we're not doing it with trucks and cranes and things like that we would call our highest technology of the day. They had to be using something like frequency. And the very function of something like the Great Pyramid of Giza is frequency. You go inside of it. I've been in the King's Chamber. You quit looking at it like a tomb. It doesn't have hieroglyphs inside of it. It has a sarcophagus. That's why I'm sure they called it a tomb. It has a box in it, approximately human or bigger size. Oh, this was for a tomb. But everything else in it is this finely hewn inverted staircase peeking up, and sound does incredible things. In fact, you don't even need to make sound. You can just move air in there, and it will create sound. And incredibly, if you just smack a wall of the Great Pyramid of Giza, it will create a tone. The tone it creates happens to be 432 cycles per second. Just, it's like a tone generator. It's like the world's biggest tone generator.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing, man. It's all kind of once you spend a few months in Sedona and have these conversations with people like you. I saw Tellinger speak, and then I luckily get to speak to you here now. It's a lot of interesting stuff that starts to blend together. One of the people I saw speak in Sedona was JJ Hertok and Desiree Hertok, and they're very interesting people. They look them up if you don't know who they are. I've recently come across them in the last few months. But he's basically I just call him Indiana Jones, because he finds something through ancient technology or ancient texts or whatever, and then he goes and unearths it. He's like, oh, this place doesn't exist. He's like, no, yes, it does. And then he goes and he finds it. It might take him a year.
He's the real
2 to 3
Indiana
years.
Jones. Yeah, no, he's like the real Indiana Jones. He's been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely how I describe him. And he was saying that basically, he was in, I can't remember which temple it was. It could have been Giza, but he was, how it's all vibration and tones. So he's able to, find the exact tones or notes or whatever. But he was doing that, and a light came in down the hallway and basically telepathically gave him information and he's showing you the picture of the hallway, and he's like this older guy, and he's not kidding. You know what I mean? This guy's been doing it this is Indiana Jones. You know what I mean? He knows what he's doing. And you're like, holy crap, wow. And so, for me, when it gets super wild like that, which is exciting because, it's expanding consciousness. It's just opening up to possibilities. And it always comes back to resonance and vibration. But then what's also the practical takeaway from knowing this information? Would you recommend, I like to listen to sound bowls. I love sound healing, and I think resonance wise, the resonance of joy, that's my vibration of vibrational signatures, joy and love and things like that. That's something that I think that, as I admitted, it affects the people around me, but also Heart Math Institute has done studies that our heartbeat actually can go, I guess, around the world or something. I'd have to find that. Check out Heart Math Institute to look at their studies, but it was something along those lines that was pretty gnarly, that your heartbeat actually emits a signal that really goes far out, really fast, really far. And so it's almost like this collective consciousness. A lot of people don't understand how connected we are vibrationally,
Yes.
and when we're looking at fearful news and we're acting in a fearful way, and we're not being aware of our own thoughts and our own patterns and our own crap, we're not only affecting directly the people on the bus beside us or at school or wherever we are, we're actually affecting everybody across the world. And the best thing that we can do is literally mind our own vibration. So it's serving our community, it's serving ourselves mostly, because as crazy as it gets out there, you still can control your own vibration and your own environment. It's in your own perspective. So that rant is kind of opening up to, with all of this amazing information and what we're seeing, do you see practical applications for it now, or things that you're hopeful for in the future?
Yeah, well, and amen to the way you just articulated that last few minutes was perfect. That is the payoff. I mean, when we talk about frequency and resonance, we start taking responsibility but we have to be kind of comfortable in the idea of talking about frequency and resonance and wave pattern and things like that. That's what my work is hopefully doing, is getting people more integrated, comfortable thinking in this curved space, like Michael Evans saw it, thinking of frequency, thinking of harmonics, thinking of the universe as this harmonic structure, and that we were always supposed to be participants in it. Like I think we were when we were building the pyramids, that we understood it. So we were participating. We were conscious entities participating in the consciousness of the all. We could all say I am because we understood we were participating in the great collective. Right now, where humanity is, in our own little pocket of our galaxy, in our own little pocket of our solar system, in our own little pocket of our countries, we've become isolationists. We have separated ourselves, and I don't know why, whether that is, if you want to go down a rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, or it was just us falling asleep at the wheel, or in a prideful state that pride and ego and fear took over. It directed our attention away from the beautiful symphonic design that animals are participating in unconsciously. Now, maybe they are participating consciously. They can't communicate it to us. I would have to believe that dolphins and whales and elephants and higher, larger brained animals certainly are probably participating in the consciousness of the system in a conscious way. But think of a spider that knows how to make a spider web, or a bird that knows how to make a nest, or instinct patterns, or migration routes. Those creatures are participating in the symphonic design, whether it's magnetic or frequency waves or whatever. And we are the highest. We know we're conscious because we can articulate it to each other. We understand what consciousness it is. And yet we're removing ourselves out of the cosmic consciousness loop. And until we get ourselves back into that, which I believe is related to this geometry, and it is no happenstance that sacred geometry, your ring, show your ring again, relates to this pattern that is nature. And you don't see that right away. You would not see your ring in this, but it is there. So it's like it has been imprinted in our consciousness to see this. The payoff, I asked my guides once, I said, what's the payoff? Here we are, we're now talking about the 432 factor 9 grid, all this stuff. And they said, you can't ask that yet. You can't jump 10 steps ahead of the game. You have to integrate and start using and recognize and see the beauty of it first. Take elemental baby steps. And that's what you and I are doing. We're redirecting people's attention onto not ourselves, but into a giant information bed that involves the most beautiful statements you could make, involves harmony, involves community, involves systems working and communicating with each other. And we can be a part of that system, a part of the symphony with consciousness, or we can do like what we've been doing for the next 500 years. We won't be here. We will extinct ourselves just by our ignorance. And we can't even claim ignorance. We know that we're producing poisons in the atmosphere. We know that we're taking out minerals that we can't replace organically. We know these things, and yet we're acting as if we didn't know those things. So that's what consciousness is, and why it's so important is first you see it, and then you act like you knew you saw it and knew that it was important.
Right. Yeah, 100% agree with all that. I think that the on one just really practical and simple application is, where you spend your money, right? And where you make your living. A lot of us, it's like, well, we're here and this is the reason why we got to do it. But, really just being conscious with where you spend your dollars, like, are you going to McDonald's? Are you, like, you can sometimes just be aware of what you're doing. And where you're buying your clothes and what you're reading, what you're ingesting, who you're supporting. Money goes a long way because it's all economy. And so, I think that's just one really simple step that we can do on this big picture. And I really love what you said about the cosmic consciousness. And all I see that is more options, like let's say you grew up and both of your parents were a lawyer, right? And you're an only son or daughter, and they're like, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a lawyer, but you're an artist at your heart and you freaking hate law and you don't want to do it. Well, they've pigeonholed you through their love for whatever reason. You're now a lawyer, and you hate it. And so, that's just one option though, but in your mind, it's been seeded as one option. That's one example, right? Maybe you have 4 options, or you grow up in underprivileged neighborhood and the best you could do is go to college, and you do, and then you have this job, and like that's the best option. So this cosmic consciousness and this community thinking, to me, is just simply allowing ourselves the ability to see other options and then to move towards and incrementally build ourselves and our lives through our own free will in this very challenging game, but not settling for things that we know in our heart, and we know also empirically through stats that are not great, but because we have to, because of survival or security or whatever the case is, we take that responsibility. And an easy way that I frame it for myself is like, I'm good with Mother Earth. Me and Mother Earth are tight, and that's what you do ayahuasca. It's like seeing a trip to your mom in the 5th dimension. And so it's interesting because the way I say it is like, DMT can be like your father, where it's like it's stern and quick, and ayahuasca is kind of like your mother. And when you're a kid, if you disappoint your mom, like she's mad at you, that's not the worst part. You're just disappointed, and you feel like an ass because you've disappointed your mom. And so just with that kind of thought of just opening up to options, thinking about the way Dan Winter puts it, I love it. Are you aware of Dan Winter?
I'm not.
Oh, dude, you're gonna love Dan Winter because he's a physicist, and he was, I think, mentored by Buckminster Fuller. And I watch his stuff, and it's like I don't even know what I'm looking at, but I do it. And he's basically talks about having shareable thoughts. How when we have shareable thoughts, and again, he's like 6 hours of physics, and then says shareable thought. I can handle that. But it's essentially how that's a harmonic resonance, how everybody involved wins. It's not like, oh, how do I go get the most from that guy and screw him over, but when we have a shareable thought, it actually comes back to our energy field and what we're doing. So I don't know if you want to add on to that rant, or I should try to ask you a question, but that's where I want to go with what you're saying.
No, it's perfect. And right now, you started what you just said with talking about money and voting. And to me, right now, money is the game. Everybody just says follow the money. If you want to see how things get done, whether it's in the medical field or the engineering field or the agricultural field, or it doesn't matter what field it is, follow the money. You're going to see how things get done, why they do or don't get done. So right now, the way you can vote the most is how you spend your money or don't spend your money. That is the way you can most profoundly vote, is with your actions. Also, ministerial. On our show, Awakening Code Radio, we remind everybody that you are a minister. So instead of how you spend your money, how you live your life is your ministry. What are people learning from you? And they're either learning something they would like to learn more about, possibly emulate, or they are learning what they don't want to be like, but somehow they are learning from you. As soon as you take that mantle of I'm a minister and what I do matters in the great field of interconnectedness, I think you start living your life differently. Thinking about your thoughts and and doing things more consciously in a more mindful way, and all of that in the payoff is, I think we won't have, physics won't just be for the physicists and the mathematicians. We will all get comfortable in the way that nature moves, and which is what physics is how stuff happens. I mean, if you just said what is physics, it's how does stuff happen. So when we all get comfortable on an elementary level of how did this happen, we might not know the initial push. That would almost be like God. What started all of it? That's where physics breaks down. We don't know what was before the Big Bang. But if we understand how this matrix of creation is held together and works, then I think we can participate in it better. And that's what I think we're trying to do right now. That's what I feel is wanting to happen, is we are opening up. And this is an ancient, beautiful, not, I don't want to say linear, because linear just means straight line, but it is something that communicates from the way long ago past, at least 6,000 years ago, and like Michael Tellinger believes, maybe hundreds of thousands of years ago. But there has been an awareness of our ancestors living on this planet that implies that they understood how things did work on an energetic, vibratory, frequency, harmonic nature. And if we're coming back to that, that feels like a really exciting time to be alive on this planet. And I believe we're coming back to that.
Beautiful. Yeah, I 100% agree. And what it reminded me of, I was in Germany last year. Yeah, last year. And I went to these museums, and they had a Sumerian exhibit of, and I actually didn't really know that much about Sumeria at the time. And the stone, they had rebuilt, the structure that they had, and these stones were massive. They were absolutely ridiculously they said they only built like a quarter of what the wall size was in this huge thing. It's like, this is just a quarter of what it would have been. But what I found really interesting is each of these stones on the one layer, they had a few like layers of regular stone, but the one layer, let's say third or fourth row up, they had all these swiggly lines and symbols, and they were all different. They was showing you right on their building that it was vibration, right there. And I don't know if it was another ancient civilization that they had there, but they had these prayer huts that they all went in, and they were really beautiful, and they were really fractal, and it kind of came over your head, so you sat in it and you kneeled in it. I think they were Islamic in nature and origin, but what it reminded me of doing was just doing basically DMT breathing, and I'm sure that's what they were doing, communing with spirit or doing something, prayer. And then that's kind of what I see when DMT activates from my pineal gland, which you can do if you look up yogic breathing or anything like that. But that's the feel. It's like, oh, this is really interesting. So when I was in there, I was like, they 100% knew what was going on. Everybody, they were able to do these absolutely ridiculously massive structures. So they knew. And then you're probably aware of the Crystal Castle or the Coral Castle.
Coral Castle.
Yeah, so he did that in the 80s. And so I think we're right on the precipice of having this information out. And so I guess my question with all this is, do you see technology like making a really big turning point? So the thought that I have is we've already had free energy. I think that we're just not allowed to use it. And I think that there's a lot of amazing scientists like Nassim Harramein. You've got Adam Tremblay. You've got a bunch of people that I think can do these things, but we're waiting for this kind of go ahead as a collective because, I like to always say Team Earth. Like, what would it look like if Team USA scientists teamed up with Team Russia, Team Korea, Team China, and we work together? We're going to be solving a lot of problems fast. So because I don't think that, even the scientific community, I've had some feedback there where people are like, what happens in the mainstream is not always true. It's like so where I think that the underground collective of real, true scientists and philanthropists and people who want to build a planet need to really just come together, get rid of all the bureaucracies and start working on stuff that matters as one unit.
Yeah. Well, free energy, just think of those words. To most people, when you say it, free energy, it just sounds like a pie in the sky. Oh, yeah, it just something sounds very disassociative when you say free energy, because we're so used to the idea of, well, we pay for energy. It's generated somewhere and it's delivered through lines and we get it to our house and it's wonderful. We flip on switches and bulbs go on and motors happen and stuff. It's free energy. It's a commodity. The whole world, the whole solar system, every galaxy we can see is operating on free energy. All plants are using free energy. The tides going up and down is free energy. Wind blowing is free energy. It's not for our purpose, but all of this is free energy. A plant converting sunlight into chlorophyll is a free energy process. No money exchanged hands from a plant sprouting a seed and converting sunlight into chlorophyll and becoming a growth sequence. That's free energy. So it's not a pie in the sky thing to say. It is us going back in the loop. And how do we live free energy? How do we live in a free energy world? We're maybe getting there. We're sucking on the teat of energy now. 100 years ago, which is a blink of the eye in the human story, 100 years ago, electricity was a novelty. If you said, oh, the grid went down, people would go, what grid? Oh, I see the streetlights don't work right now, but I'm used to walking around in the dark. Now, if we say the grid goes down, our world shuts off. The way that we function, a technology that barely existed 100 years ago, we are now 100% dependent on. If we lose electricity, we can't move things. We can't do anything. And very few of us know. I'm taking you live on a farm. People like you would know how to grow some things and possibly build some things. Most of humanity would not, and it would just be, and all that happened somebody, a visitor, would look at our planet, well, nothing changed. Everything's still functioning. It's like, no, we lost the grid. What grid? The grid that powers all of this. It's like, oh man, you guys, it starts becoming elementally how far off we have gotten out of the loop of what we're supposed to, how we're supposed to be living on this planet.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I really like the way that you phrase that. Um, you know, so this has been a really beautiful and interesting conversation. I know that you're busy and have some things to do, so I want to at least get a quick question and a final question. And the quick one is, so people should definitely check out the Awakening Code radio show that you have with my friend Michelle. I hope to see you guys. She does a dolphin tour that I almost made. That's a whole thing. We could go down there forever. Oh, shoot. Yeah, I would have been there. So you guys interview world leaders. You are sitting at a table with physicists, some of the best mathematicians, having conversations that are, to most people, probably mind-blowing. So for you, if someone is interested in this kind of stuff, who do you like right now as leaders are putting out information or things like that? Like if you go to my website, I'm working a little bit with Nassim Harramein in the Resonance Project. So I'm about to go through his resonance course, and it's physics. And, you know, when he did the talk, he's like, don't worry, you don't need to be a physicist to get value and understand this. You know, you're actually going to get a lot of value. And so because my mind doesn't, it's not strong suit in mathematics and physics, I'm really excited to go in, but it's you know, it's interesting. So I've got the Resonance Project. You know, Dan Winter for me is someone I think that you'll enjoy if you haven't seen any of his work. But for you, who do you enjoy or recommend taking a look at, or just putting out useful or next level information?
Well, Nassim's definitely doing some great work, and he has been guided. You know, he was guided to this same structure, the vector equilibrium that we talked about, in its spherical toroidal essence. This shape, he was featured in a movie, The Connected Universe, and I know that what he talks about, instead of the closest touching of spheres, is the overlapping of spheres. That's what this pattern is. It's nothing more than overlapping of spheres by 60 degrees. 60 degrees is what sacred geometry is, you know, it's infinite. Manas Kafados, he's a physicist who has been talking about merging spirituality and physics all along. He's the dean of physics at Chapman University here in California. He's written numerous books. He's got the New York Times bestseller, You Are the Universe, that he co-authored with Deepak Chopra. Someone great to read that book, You Are the Universe. Opens your mind. You might not feel like you can really understand a lot, but it starts opening you up. And that's why I hope our conversations, you know, on my radio show and your podcast and everything else is not to oversupply too much information, is just to open people up to this idea of what is really going on here. It is something so much more profound and deep and elemental and available to all. It is free to all. This frequency-based essence, it makes no distinction of someone's monetary wealth. So to me, we are standing at a certain type of pinnacle, just ready to launch if we get the information correct. To me, the information needs to be precise. It doesn't need to be precise for a lot of other people doing this work. To me, I've been guided to number sequences, so I stick with them. But Manas Kafados, and his book that he wrote, You Are the Universe, would be a great. Right now, that's kind of in my head.
Awesome. Appreciate that, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And so the last question I'm going to ask is there anything that you wish that I had asked that you're excited to talk about, that you wanted to share, or if you just want to leave the listeners with, you know, where they can find more about you and some final thoughts?
You know, I think I'll think of stuff after we're done, and I'll go, oh, we totally forgot to talk about it, because neither of us are reading from any notes. So we're just, you know, as something comes to us, I think it's probably more than enough information. I'm sure I will think of some things that we did not. I'm going to pull the camera back and just show you this pipe cleaner structure,
Yeah.
just so you can see the whole thing possibly. Just keep in mind that it started from this, and the vector equilibrium gave the architecture for this. That is the top, that little snowflake right here is at the top of this structure. And if you just follow it in its own math and beauty, you can see all these straight lines, the patterning of it. It just reveals the same exact 7 circles of sacred geometry that your ring is, that sacred geometry is. So there truly is a design pattern that seems to be based on this sacred geometry that people like you've probably been drawn to sacred geometry and not known fully why, and have heard how important it is. And it's important because it might be the geometry of the universe in multiple dimensions, not 3, but actually 4 in time would be 5D. So we might be getting close to literally talking about 5D living.
Incredible, brother. Man,
All right.
all amazing stuff. And so if people want to get a hold of you, is it sonicgeometry.com is yours?
Sonicgeometry.com is our website that I run with Alana Luna. Awakening Code Radio, listen to our show and send me a message through there. Just like Awakening Code Radio. Listen to some of our past, podcasts. We have 250 of them now, and lots and lots of really great people, physicists, engineers, healers, mathematicians, musicians, philosophers. I mean, all walks of life contributing, just like you are contributing something to this whole matrix of what we're talking about.
Awesome, brother. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for the work. Thank you for your 2 beautiful documentaries. I can't wait for the 3rd. Who knows
Oh,
when?
man, don't even say that. This is enough. My head's kind of, sometimes I have to let it go and drift away from it for a while because it's sometimes too much. But thank you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you and I appreciate your work. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom and all that you're doing.
You bet. Thanks.
Okay, take care. See you guys. Bye.